All right, welcome everyone to our first ever Talk Trashy podcast. This is a follow-up to our blog and website where you get to hear from your two favorite hiking sister duo. My name is Maggie or Riveter, and this is
Speed Goat or Aaron?
and we are here to talk about all things through hiking related. Our first episode today, we're just going to dive into getting to know us a little bit more and how we even started through hiking and what our through hiking journey is. And then we will follow it up with some fun through hiking topics and quizzes and the like. So, Speed Goat, do you want to jump right in with your little introduction?
In my everyday life, I am a registered dietitian. I'm working in long-term care. But in my personal life, I really like uh, trail running, watching Netflix. I am very good at binge watching shows and movies, going to the gym, and just being active in general. Um, yeah.
Awesome. Well, good to meet you, Speed Goat. My name's Riveter, and in case anyone is wondering our birth order, I hope you're guessing which one is older. But I am actually the older sister. And I think what people actually find most amazing is that we have two other sisters who do not enjoy through hiking as much as we do. So we are actually only half of our sister sibling group.
We always say that if they're going to through hike, they could through hike together and we'll continue to hike as a team.
Yes. Picking the right partner matters, especially the partner we share a tent. And so a partner that you can share a tent with as an adult is a really big criteria marker, I would say. So a little bit about me. I am the oldest, and I previously worked the typical career ladder situation. I worked in nonprofit fundraising primarily for higher education and decided to start living in a van at the beginning of COVID. So I started van life full time, did that for a couple years before through hiking, but loved the van so much that I've gone back to it. And so I still live a mainly nomadic life, relying on mainly remote work or seasonal work. This is my first winter doing kind of like a seasonal job gig. So I will let you know how that goes for those of you who are serial through hikers.
As you can see, Riveter lives a more, I would say, adventurous lifestyle, which I'm sure most of you might live that way too. I live a more, I would say, traditional lifestyle between going, to work, staying in one city. I live in the DC area. So, yeah, you have a little bit of a mix from both of us.
And I think that's a good point. So I actually lived in Washington, D.C. as well for about 6 years before I left. And right before we first started hiking. And I think that plays a little bit into our trail story and where we're from. So we grew up mainly in the Richmond, Virginia, and Raleigh, North Carolina area. We both went to school in North Carolina, and then in our adult lives moved to Washington, D.C. And so we do have a very heavily skewed perspective for the East Coast. And I think that played a lot into our first trail selection. Because I think there's two parts of it, right? It's I'm going to go through hike, and what trail am I going to go through hike? For you, was there, well, I guess I'll let Speed Goat tell the story because she is the reason we even started through hiking to begin with.
Oh, yes, yes. I was the genius that came up with this idea. In 2020, I had graduated from college and started my first job. So in June in healthcare. And I'm sure, as you can imagine, that was right in the midst of COVID. So started my first job, and it honestly just wasn't what I was expecting it to be. So I was going to work and not really sure if the career that I had chose was what I wanted to do for the rest of my life, kind of just having an internal like crisis moment. Like many people who are on trail. And so I came up with this brilliant idea that I could go through hike the Appalachian Trail. I had been out on the Appalachian Trail a couple of times backpacking. Like Riveter said, we grew up in North Carolina, so we had been out to portions of the trail before, and even been out to like Asheville and the mountain towns of North Carolina. So I was familiar with the Appalachian Trail, not familiar with everything that it would entail, but backpacking through hiking for 6 months seemed like a way better alternative than going into work day in and day out. But although I was familiar with backpacking, I was still kind of scared to go and do that alone, especially as just a young female. So I asked Riveter, who at the time was living in a van. It seemed like this would be way up her alley. You're not taking showers and, sleeping in a bedroom and things. So I was like, this will be perfect. She'll love this. So I call her up May of, I think it was 2021. And I think she laughed and politely declined the invitation. And so I kind of was like, okay, that was put to rest. Like, I'll dream about it, but maybe I'll figure something else out. And then a month later, she gets back to me and says, yeah, I'll do it. And then we don't even talk about it from there on out. We just start buying gear. Like, we ended up moving in together. Things just started rolling fast. And I feel like it never was like okay, let's plan this out. It was just, okay, now we're going. But I don't know if I know, like, what changed for you in that month, between me asking and then you finally being like, okay, yes.
It was never a like hemming and hawing on whether to backpack or not, or like to through hike. Like that part of it, I very much thought I was going to enjoy. And I will say, I think that 90% of the people we have met out there have either never backpacked before or have never backpacked longer than a week. And you and I have done week-long trips at the absolute most. Mm-hmm. And it also wasn't like I backpacked every other weekend. Like, I mean, I could name on one hand how many backpacking trips I had done. So for some reason, though, that was not the holdup for me. It was not like oh yeah, I've only slept in a tent for 7 nights. Let's try 155 nights. It was more the like, what do you do about life? I had just started a new job and I was sitting there like, do I just have to quit? Is that the way forward? Do you just quit your job and then you go and then you have to get a new job? Still being pretty young in my career. I was 29 when we did the Appalachian Trail. So, I mean, I was in my career for 6-7 years when we were thinking about doing this. And you just have this constant career ladder drilled into you, I think, from the second you leave college of, how can you be the best employee? How can you keep your resume looking clean? Who's going to hire you again? And so it really felt like, if I choose to through hike, what is going to happen to my ability to make money or continue working after through hiking? So for anyone curious, we both just quit our jobs outright. Some people do get leave of absences. I tend to find that the people I meet who get a leave of absence are older. So they have been with their company for longer. They have built up that kind of trust with their company and things like that. That was neither of our experiences. I actually don't know if either of us even asked for a leave of absence. I think we both were just like, we are going to use this also as a time to make a career change.
Yeah.
So we're just going to quit and hope for the best, which is something that to any younger person, not that I would recommend financial irresponsibility. I would say, and I'm curious, Vika, what you think about this, that the risk of it, you are taught so much to be risk adverse, especially depending on the career field you're in. And if you can swing it, I would tell you that there is a certain amount of freedom that comes with knowing that you have options rather than just, I am now working and I am working until I retire.
Yeah, yeah. And it's funny that you talk about like more of the corporate kind of side of things and, building, climbing the ladder and stuff like that. Uh, where because I was working in long-term care, I'm day in, day out seeing people who some were young, in their 50s, 60s. I mean, other people who were pretty older in their 80s and 90s, but people who I feel like when talking to them, sometimes either they had amazing stories and I'm like, wow, I want to have a life like that. Or other people that are like, I didn't realize that like I wouldn't have enough time to do the things that I wanted to do. And now I can't. And so I almost had the opposite where I'm like, I need to do this now. Like I can't be waiting around. And I know that I do have the privilege working in healthcare. It can be a little bit easier to stop and start your jobs, especially in healthcare in today's society. It just is. So that comes from, privilege of being able to come and go a little bit more as you please. But you do need to take advantage of some of this time that you get when you're younger.
Mm-hmm. So how did you choose? Because when you asked me, you said, not let's go through hike. It was, let's do the Appalachian Trail. And I think, and I could be wrong, I don't know how, I would not say that we grew up in an outdoorsy family. Like we did not do camping trips as family vacations. So besides going to the Appalachian Trail and more like a pulling up in a parking lot and our dad being like, that's the Appalachian Trail, I still think we knew about the other two trails, about the Pacific Crest Trail and the Continental Divide.
Yeah.
And you were like, the Appalachian Trail. Do you want to hike that one?
I think because that was the one I was familiar with.
Okay.
I had been out like backpacking just on like weekend trips and stuff around there. And then also it's on the East Coast. Like if things went wrong or something happened, we had family close by. Both of us at the time we had partners, so they were living in the Washington, D.C. area, more specifically Maryland. So they weren't too far away from the trail as we started heading up, north. So there was a support system there. And then honestly, it was just lack of knowledge about the other two trails, about the PCT and CDT. From what I knew about them, they were much more remote. I almost felt like I didn't have the skills to do those trails yet, and that I wanted to start off with the Appalachian Trail because I knew it was so much more built up. There was more support for us around it. So it felt like a good trail to start our first backpacking or through hike on.
Yeah, I have noticed between doing the AT and the PCT that depending which coast you're on, you tend to meet more hikers who are from that coast.
Mm-hmm.
And so I wonder if it's that familiarity. That is something that I would definitely echo for other people thinking to through hike, is that the proximity to home was really helpful for our first through hike.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Our parents dropped us off at the trailhead, which I mean, if you can score that is way easier than figuring it out how to get from the Atlanta airport to Amicalola. They do have shuttles, but we had the benefit of our own personal taxi.
Yeah.
Our partners both came out to see us multiple times on trail. And then when we got to the Maryland section, we were only 45 minutes from our apartment.
Yeah.
And we did go back for a few days because Speed Goat got the cold from hell.
Yep. Yeah.
You want to talk about carrying consumables? She had like a thing of cough syrup stuffed in her
face. But it was in my fanny pack, so that's count as worn weight.
But that felt like cheating a little bit. Do you remember going back for that weekend and you're sitting in the apartment and you're like, I'm not supposed to be here right now.
Yeah. And then you're like, this is what my life could be, taking a shower, sleeping in a bed. Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, right. No one is forcing me
Yep.
To be honest, like I am actively choosing this, but I feel like you get to a point where you're like, this is no longer just like an optional decision. Like
Yeah. We got to get this done. Let's
I am
go.
out here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
So
also what plays into it too when you're picking a trail, I know for us it seemed more like proximity support, like things like that. But then looking back after we did the PCT, I was like, oh, the PCT is so beautiful. The views, everything that you just don't get on the Appalachian Trail. So if you're somebody who's like an avid backpacker and likes the views and all that kind of stuff, I'm almost like the PCT or CDT might be I don't know, a more adventurous choice.
mhm.
The Appalachian Trail was definitely fun, but it is a very social trail,
Yeah.
which I think we needed at the time.
The
So,
socialness of the AT, and I'm curious your thought. I think um, is partly due to the shelters. The shelters every 8 to 10 to 12 miles make natural meeting points. Like people aim for shelters to eat lunch. They aim there to eat dinner. And then even if you're not sleeping in the shelter, people are camping around it. So you might be eating breakfast with people too, in a way that on the PCT, you can sometimes gauge like, oh, by this water source, people might be hanging out. But
yep,
I would say for the most of the time on the PCT, when we were camping, it was just us and our tramily. There were
yep,
not other hikers around us.
yeah. It's funny, yeah. The shelters almost act like you're in college, right? Like a dorm.
Yeah.
It's like all these people are here, and so you innately just start eating dinner with people or having conversations or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, that's definitely, if you are worried about being alone on a trail, I would say that the AT was the way to go. It was your soft launch into backpacking by yourself.
Hmm.
Because you could be and I don't mean this to be like, oh, the trail's crowded. I mean, you're not walking single file down the trail. I think that you could be as alone as you want to be. Because I mean, you're in the woods. If you don't want to camp by someone else, you don't have to. But if you wanted that comfort, if you wanted that social interaction, you very much could have it
Right.
at
Yeah.
any point.
Yeah. I think the whole entire Appalachian Trail, we maybe tented alone, not near
Twice,
anybody else. Yeah. Um,
twice.
otherwise, like we'd set up tent and somebody else would come along, or we would be the people who came along, you know? Uh,
And that kind of leads into what I would say was the number one question or comment we got when we told people we were through hiking. And I'm sure any female listeners out here, you get this a lot. It is is it safe? How are you going to stay safe out there? And from our experience, I would say on both hikes too, I never once felt unsafe. I never felt like I was in a creepy situation. I never felt threatened. I never had a situation where I was like, this does not sit right in my gut.
right. Yeah.
Um, and so you always, and I don't know if it was having the other hikers around that helped that at first of
Oh
being
yeah,
able to.
definitely having other people around. I would say like, I mean, as a female, you're always going to take extra precautions. Being aware of your surroundings when you're hiking, if you're going to listen to music, only having one earbud in, like there are things that you innately just do. And I would say continue doing those things, but don't feel like you have to go beyond that. We had so many people ask us if we were going to carry a firearm, which if you want to, go for it, but like it's not needed. Um,
Yeah, and
yeah.
we didn't I guess this even flows into kind of like our preparation for the trail. Safety or like personal safety wasn't something that we heavily felt the need to prepare for based on research from other thru hikers. So we did not carry pepper spray. We both had knives primarily for like cutting cheese and
Well, it
not for
turned
any
into
sort of
that.
not for any sort of self-defense. Yeah, so thinking through that and like we make this announcement to our families that we're going to go do this. Um, what do you remember the response being from uh, like anyone, from our parents or from coworkers or friends?
So I think the first people I actually told was so my partner, his name is Joey, and we have some friends, some like a couple friend. And I had told them because we had been backpacking with them and they were so excited. And so I was like, okay, like this is an insane thing to do. So they were like right there with me being like, okay, you need this, you need that. Like half the time I feel like they were almost educating me about stuff that I might need for the trail. Then I remember telling dad, and that was not as like, this is awesome. It was more like you, like, what are you going to do with your career? Like, this is going to destroy that. What is Joey going to do? So he had more of like the life things, you know. And then, of course, being mindful of our safety and stuff. So he was afraid, is it safe to go out there? Um, yeah.
I don't know if you would characterize this for like, oh, that's cool, please don't.
Yep. Yeah. And some of
And
it just came from a lack of knowledge.
mhm.
I remember telling people at work too, and like they didn't even know what it was. Uh, you know? So it's just educating people on what it is. I mean, they might still hold true to their like, this is not a good decision, but at least there's like a little bit of knowledge base behind it then.
Yeah, I will say, quitting a job is never easy. I mean, even if you're getting like inside, you're like, I've been waiting for this moment. It's still like hard. Like it's a form of confrontation, but the two times I have now quit my job to go through hiking, my coworkers have thought it is the best reason ever to leave. The questions, the emails, like people wanting to stop and chat and grab coffee just to talk about the trail, is actually super fascinating. Because it's when someone leaves, it's always, oh, they're leaving for this other job, not I'm leaving to go hike.
Right.
Uh, our parents did change their tune pretty quickly though.
Yeah, yeah. I think that was when they had dropped us off in Georgia. Um, they were adamant that they were going to hike a little bit with us. Um, we go to get our bag tags and stuff like that, and our mom is making us sit in on that little
Oh,
the
that education course.
education course, which was actually pretty good. So I would recommend doing it. We learned the PCT bear hang and things. I mean, there's a lot of like leave no trace and etiquette stuff. And then left off to start hiking. And we were on the steps of, the Amicalola Falls, going up the famous, I forget how many steps it is,
A
800 steps,
lot.
something like that. And this man stops us and is like, oh, are you through hiking? And we're like, yes. He pulls out $20 for each of us. So $40 total, and gives it to us and was like, here's your first trail mat. Use it on your first resupply. And we were like, oh, we can't take that. No. And he refused. He was like, you have to take it. So he gives it to us. And then he's just like, happy trails, and keeps going. And our parents saw this whole interaction. And I think after that, they were like, oh, okay, like this is normal. Like they'll be taken care of.
Yeah. I know that was a turning point for our dad. He was like,
Yeah.
what just happened? And then he went the other extreme. Then he bought one of those wall-sized AT maps and would like mark off where we were and date it and would track it and would want updates about, how did we like this state? It's definitely, if you depending on how you keep in contact with people back home, it definitely is an experience for everyone involved.
Yes. Yeah.
How else did we prepare? I mean, we basically made the decision to through hike, told people we made the decision to through hike. We were both right off the bat like, well, if we do this, we're quitting our jobs. So that's just what it is.
I think our next thing we started, doing the whole gear thing, scrutinizing everything that we were going to have in our pack.
More
But
you than me. I was prepared to just take what I had and hope for the best.
Yes, and then she ended up having to rebuy a whole bunch of stuff on trails.
That's true. My old backpacking stove, MSR pocket rocket for a few years at that point, and it stopped working before Neil's Gap, which is 40 miles into the AT.
Feel like we almost had this lull in between like buying gear, and then it came to around like February. So we quit our jobs at the end of February, and then we were going to start like the first week of March. So we gave ourselves like a week break before ending our job and starting. And I remember that like last month just being a scramble. Like we were like, oh, okay, like we have to get our resupply boxes like done. And Riveter came up with this idea to dehydrate a whole bunch of meals like in our own house to send to us. And that happened in like the last month. And so she's like day in, day out, like doing these dehydrated meals in between work calls and whatever. So I remember that last month being like pretty hectic, and even that last week between work and starting.
And we didn't even send full resupply for the trail. We decided we had chosen 7 points on trail. So we were only packing 7 resupply boxes. One, we had no idea how much food to put in these things. So I think we were putting like a week's worth of food in each box for both of us. And
yeah, but like a week's worth of like snacks, like they weren't even real, like we had no lunches. It was a lot of like
olive oil packets.
Like, yeah.
200 olive oil packets we bought off Amazon that were like, we will just eat these like regularly.
Yeah. Yeah.
Man, those dehydrated meals, I just never put together how long dehydrating takes. These meals have like 10 different components, and dehydrating does not take 30 minutes. It takes 8 hours. So yes, all of these meals took multiple days to do.
Because not only are you having to like literally make the meal almost as you would in normal life, and then you dehydrate everything.
A big reason for doing this was not because we needed to. I look back on it, I'm like, what were we thinking? It was more we wanted to have special treats for ourselves. We didn't want to pay for backpacking meals. And this was a way to send, these few resupply boxes full of food that we wouldn't be buying. It's not instant mashed potatoes. Now we can have spaghetti. Now we can have a Mexican tortilla soup, that kind of thing. So it's supposed to be like these special treat kind of things. And yeah, it was good. Like I loved the spaghetti, especially, but not for the hassle. But it was not that good.
Yeah.
So lesson learned, and we did not do this for the PCT.
I think we also were like very like ambitious beforehand, being like, oh, we're going to be so healthy on the trail. We had picked out a whole bunch of stuff that we were like, oh, okay, yeah, like let's send shredded coconut chips.
That's right. Coconut chips. I had like powdered coconut milk.
Yes.
Protein bars.
Like mixed nut stuff, like things where I'm like, I don't even eat this in my normal life. Why would I want this on the trail?
Yeah, the toasted coconut is phenomenal in theory. Not phenomenal if it's not something you would normally eat.
Yeah.
All right, so let's dive into the fun section now. This is our trail mix section. And we're going to play a couple games. So the first game we have here is trail related red flag or deal breaker.
Yes. So it's a term I've normally heard in like dating, right? So if it's a red flag, that means that this is like, ooh, something that like wasn't great, but like I can live with, like we'll discuss it, but it'll be fine. Deal breaker is like, no, I can't. Like, that's it.
Okay, so let's do this kind of like fire round. So you ask me one, I'll give you my instant reaction, and then I'll fire one back at you for your knee-jerk reaction, red flag or deal breaker.
Okay. My first one is They do not dig cat holes.
Red flag.
Okay.
Look, it's not, for me, it's not even the fact that there is poop on the ground. It's the toilet paper.
Yes.
Like, at least dig a hole for your toilet paper. Put a rock on it if you're not going to dig a hole. Okay. Mine for you. They go to the road when there are already hikers out there hitchhiking.
Oh. I almost want to be like deal breaker because if I got a hitch, I definitely would not let them in my car.
You're not going to get a hitch. You got 4 people out there on the road.
Honestly, probably a deal breaker. You're standing in between me and getting into town.
All right.
Yeah. That is a etiquette thing. If you see other people out there hitching, you wait your turn. Or you walk somewhere else, go down the road. Like too many hikers out there trying to hitch, people are not going to stop. They're going to be like, I'm going to get swarmed by, yeah.
First come, first serve.
Yep. They do not pre-rinse their clothes or even their socks before doing laundry. And they're going to share a laundry with you.
Deal breaker, deal breaker, deal breaker. Your clothes will be dirtier the more hikers' clothes you put in your laundry, especially if they're not pre-rinsed. And when we say pre-rinse, we mean you are in a sink wringing the dirt out of your socks. And you'll like watch like mud come out of your clothes. But think about it. That's what would be happening inside of the washing machine. The water is just pulling all of the dirt out of your clothes and then tumbling it around with dirt water. So we are big fans of the pre-rinsing. If you get all of like the obvious dirt, your clothes will be so much cleaner. Yes. I will not put my clothes in a washer with people who have not pre-rinsed because my clothes will come out dirtier.
Yep, who have not pre-rinsed. And I personally don't like putting my clothes into a laundry that has like multiple through hikers. Like I'm like 3 people max. That is all these washers can do, even though we each only have probably like 3 pieces of clothing. When they're that dirty, like, yeah.
You need it. Yep. It's not even the space. It's just about the amount of water in there.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
All right. My next one for you, another etiquette one. They do not give way to hikers coming uphill.
Ooh. That annoys me, but I think it's more of a red flag.
Sometimes you need the break. You're huffing it up those switchbacks.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. They carry a physical book to read at night.
I would say red flag. I want to be here for people's luxury items. We all have a luxury item. We could do a whole podcast on luxury items. Some people choose lighter luxury items than others. The thing with a book, though, because I'll give them, like, sometimes you get to your tent at night and you just want 5 to 10 minutes of something to do before you fall asleep. And a book is a phenomenal way to do that. But it doesn't have to be a physical book. Like, read on your phone. You are carrying 2 extra pounds for no reason. Absolutely no reason. And what are you going to do with it when you finish? Are you going to mail it back? Are you going to leave it in a hiker box? Like, what are you going to do with this thing? Hopefully not burn it like Wild style.
They rip out the pages of the ones that they've read.
Yeah, that's another thing. Everyone thinks that like you're going to be having bonfires every night. No through hiker is taking the time to set up a fire at every shelter. Though, green flag, the person who makes a fire at a shelter that you get to sit by.
Appreciate it. Yep. I'll spare my book for that.
Yeah. Maybe those people could team up.
Okay, you have one more?
My last one for you. They get to camp early, meaning before dinner time, and set up their tent in the middle of a spot that could fit multiple tents.
I think gut reaction, deal breaker. If other people show up and they don't say a word and still keep their tent there, yeah, definitely.
Nothing as disappointing as showing up to a spot that lists it's a 5-person spot and you get there and someone has set up their duplex across 4 spots.
Yes, yeah. I totally get it. Like you're trying to find a good spot to sleep. You want a good recovery and whatever, but when you get there so early, like I feel like if you're getting there before dinner time, let's say like 4 o'clock, like assume other people are going to show up and that they're going to want a space to tent. And so even though the flattest spot might be in between a whole, like in the middle of like 4 spaces, like be mindful that other people are going to show up.
If you're rolling in at 7 and there's no one else there, by all means,
yeah,
take the lay of the land. All right, so we're going to get into some trail lingo. So these are all of the acronyms and kind of sayings that you'll hear people talk about. And if you're already a thru hiker, you're probably pretty familiar with them. If you're not, some of these might seem a little funny. So I'm going to hit you with some here, Speed Goat, and let's see how well you do. I'm going to start off pretty easy. So we got Nobo.
Northbound hiker.
Sobo.
Southbound.
Yo-yo.
Where you do the full hike. Let's say you're going Nobo all the way up north, and then you'll turn around and then go Sobo all the way back down.
Those people really like hiking.
Yep.
Flip-flop.
Oh, this is where you're going to start somewhere on trail. It could be like halfway through, hike up or down, and then come back to that spot where you started at and then hike the other section. So you're starting like somewhere in the middle of the trail.
This is pretty popular on the AT specifically because the PCT does not allow flip-flops. But some people might wonder why people choose to do that. And it's primarily for weather windows. If you're unable to start in the main season for Nobos or Sobos, you can do a flip-flop so you can still make the trail in the correct weather time.
Yeah.
My favorite one, Nero.
This is a near zero. So a 0 day would be like not hiking any miles. This is like usually a town day or if you're going to stay in the backcountry or whatever, but you're not hiking. Nero is hiking near a 0. So you're still hiking that day, but not a full day. So for us, we always quantified a Nero as like on the AT, hiking less than 10 miles that day would be considered a Nero.
Mm-hmm. And on the flip side of that, a hero day.
Oh, yeah, I forgot about that. So this is a term we heard on the PCT. Another hiker had told us about it. And this is when you're hiking 25 miles, still go into town and do a full resupply and come back out to trail.
I mean, round of applause for you on that one.
And you come back to trail and you're still sleeping in your tent.
Yep. A 0 day.
So 0, hiking no miles.
LNT.
Leave no trace.
An FKT.
This is a fastest known time. I think this acronym took me the longest to figure out what it stood for.
Especially relevant to the AT, PUDs.
Ooh, pointless ups and downs, which thank goodness the PCT does not believe in.
A lash.
A lash is a long ass section hike. So these are people who are out there like longer than, I would say, like a week or two. Like they're covering like a couple hundred miles.
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I would say 400, 500, 600 miles, even up to 1,000, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
To yellow blaze.
Yellow blazing. This is where you take the road, you get in a car to skip miles on trail. But skipping miles of like hikeable miles.
Yeah, I would say this is definitely more of a term on the AT. When you hear people talk about yellow blazing than on the PCT. I think because of the mandatory skips that happen on the PCT with wildfires. And then it's even with wildfires, it's not about what section of trail is legally closed. It's also about what is the air quality from the fire that's happening.
Yep.
So I feel like yellow blazing is more mandatory on the PCT. So we just kind of don't talk about it. But on the AT, definitely more of a term.
Yep.
Along those lines, the red line.
Ooh, the red line. So this is going to be on far out. So this is the navigational app that a lot of people will use. And you'll see on the map that the trail is a red line. That's what indicates what the trail is. So when people say, are you redlining it? That means that you're hiking the actual trail.
And I think that's definitely something I did not appreciate enough is that the trail goes through popular hiking sections. So it is not the only trail out there. You can have, and here's our next term, blue line.
Yep. Blue line or blue blazing. So these are usually like, again, on far out. There are other trails that will come off of or join up with the main trail. And these will be marked in blue. Sometimes they rejoin back up with the trail so you can take them and see a more scenic path or whatever you want to do. But those would be considered a blue blaze or a blue line, and they're marked in blue on far out.
To yogi. This, I will say, is not stealing. You are not stealing people's
absolutely
food.
not. Unless it's unattended. This is when like a thru hiker would butter people up to get other food or things from who else is out there. It could be another thru hiker. I don't know why you would do that. But usually it's to other like day hikers or weekenders or whatever.
You're going through a campground and people are grilling out.
Yeah.
You walk by and look sad and pathetic, like, oh, hey, that smells very great.
Yeah. Wish I had some food. Then they give you a hamburger. That's called Yogi Bear. Or yogiing things off of people.
Which can be close to trail magic.
Yep. So trail magic is when there is something people are offering you, usually for free, or I think it is like for free. So this could be in the form of food. Sometimes you'll see people who set up like full tables of snacks and beverages and whatever, charging stations for thru hikers, and this is for free. Other times it can be in the form of a ride. I know a lot of times when there are trail angels who will give rides and stuff like that.
A cooler full of cold drinks, which was my favorite trail magic on the PCT. Coming across just a cold Gatorade after a hot, no shade 17-mile section.
Yep.
This is a fun one. Ride bride.
This is the person that you put out to go hitchhike. So if you're hiking in a pair or whatever, you pick the person who is going to get a ride. A lot of times it's going to be a female, but sometimes it could be a guy. If you're good at hitchhiking.
Our ride bride for the AT, and I would say about half of the PCT, was actually a guy. He could get anyone to pull over for him. Anyone. It took a lot of skill and some creativity on our part to finally out hitch him. But yeah, it does not have to be female for the bride. It honestly, anyone who can put out the good vibes you want me in your car.
Yes, yep.
Um, all right. Well, that is it for our acronyms today. And that wraps up our trail mix section. I think the biggest thing that I hope to convey to people when I talk about through hiking is that we're just regular, ordinary people. Like we did not grow up um, in survival mode. We hardly ever went camping. We are, still on the younger side. I'm going to say that, even though I'm over 30 now. Um, and we were living very traditional apartment city living lives, and it took the shot on through hiking. So you do not have to be a specific person or at a specific point in your life to make through hiking a reality. There is not a skill set that you need to have in order to go through hike.
Yeah.
So that is going to wrap up our first Talk Trashy podcast. We will be back. Don't worry, we have lots to talk about. It's also our chance to catch up with each other. So hopefully you enjoyed it and you enjoyed getting to hear about us. And we will send more hiking tips and tricks and stories your way. In the meantime, check out our website, trailsunpacked.com, where we have other videos, some blogs, and even some workshops if anyone is interested in hearing kind of the nitty gritty how to's of through hiking to make that a reality.
Yep. And follow us on Trails Unpacked on Instagram. We'll be putting out some reels and stories and things like that too. Anything you can do, like subscribe, share, whatever.
All right. Thanks, everyone.
Yeah.